You guys ready? Colin, get it under control.
No more jokes.
Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. We are here at the Freeport High School Library. We have a full board with the exception of Beth, who is not with us this evening, but I would like to take a moment and welcome Anna Child, our new board member representing Freeport. She picked a great meeting for budget to start. Way to just jump right in. Love that. So we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the January 6, 2025 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions? What'd I say? 6, sorry. January 8th, 2025 as presented. Cheyenne, thank you. Danielle? All those in favor? Great. None opposed. Adjustments to the agenda.
None this evening.
Okay, so we will move right on to good news and recognition, and we will start with our report from our student rep, Phoebe.
All right, so the top thing going on right now, everyone's favorite, midterms. But students have been working really hard to get ready for these, and it's a great chance to show what they've learned all year. And this also means that semester 2 classes will be starting next week, which is very exciting. We have an a cappella club being started by our new chorus teacher, which is super exciting. Our annual information night for 8th grade students is next Tuesday, and current FHS students will be participating in tours and some club activities for the incoming freshmen next year. The District 3 music festival is next Friday, where some of our chorus and band students have been selected to perform with other musicians from schools in District 3. The Unified Basketball season has started, which is a Special Olympics program that combines people with and without intellectual or physical disabilities on the same team. So the goal of Unified Basketball is to promote friendship, understanding, and inclusion. And their first game is February 12th here at 4 p.m. So definitely come to that. They're really fun. And those are I like them more than the normal basketball games. So, and a total of 15 FHS students won a combined 50 awards. I counted each one for the FHS in the Scholastics Art and Writing Awards competition, which is an annual competition where thousands of student artists submit original works of art, and they are judged on technical skill, originality, and voice. And so congrats to all those students, which is really awesome. So yeah, it's good times. Midterms are amazing.
So if we see Phoebe sneak out, it's because she's going home to study for chemistry. Did you hear that, Jen? She's going home to study for chemistry. All right, so we will move on to item 7 on our agenda, which is public comment. If we have anyone who has a public comment, we just ask they come up to the microphone, give us their name, the town they live in, and they have 3 minutes to share anything they'd like to share with the board. No? Okay, we have another one at the end of the agenda. Oh. Are you taking your coat off? You coming up? You sure? We'll wait for you. Okay. All right, then. So we will carry on with item 8 on the agenda, reports from the superintendent.
Okay. Phoebe, you stole a lot of my thunder here, but that's okay. That's okay. We let you go first. On the Unified Basketball theme, I'm pleased to report that Freeport Middle School was awarded $5,540 by Special Olympics of Maine to support a unified basketball team. Unified Sports is dedicated to promoting social inclusion through shared sports training and competition experiences by joining people with and without intellectual disabilities on the same team. It is inspired by a simple principle: train together and play together. It's a quick path to friendship and understanding. Unified sports teams are made up of approximately equal number of athletes, people with intellectual disabilities, and unified partners, people without disabilities. Teams are made up of people of similar age and ability, which makes practices more fun and games more challenging and exciting for all. Unified teams dramatically increase inclusion in our community, using sports to help break down barriers that historically kept people apart. So on the heels of what Phoebe shared at the high school, the season starting, we're pleased to announce that our middle school will also have a team, which is fantastic. And again, they are amazing to watch. And I will just piggyback on what Phoebe said about the annual Scholastics Art and Writing Competition. We did have just an incredible amount of students that received multiple awards, and we couldn't be more proud. And certainly we congratulate the artists of the incredible amount of time and work they dedicated to creating these incredible pieces. So congratulations. And I think it certainly speaks highly of our arts program, pre-K-8. Number 2, resignations. I'm announcing Darby Steindorf has resigned as Freeport High School educational technician. And number 3, support staff new hires. Antonio Romasco is a Freeport Middle School nutrition assistant. So we welcome them both to RSU 5.
Thank you. All right, number 9, administrative reports. Kelly for finance.
Good evening. Included in your packets tonight is the expenditure report through December 31st, 2024. Currently, we are about 51.6% collected in revenues, and we are about 85.5% committed or expended at this time for our expenditures. We're on track for finishing the year with a positive balance at this point, and we don't have any concerns with the current year's budget.
Questions for Kelly? Thank you. All right, board comments and committee reports. A is board information exchange or agenda requests. Maura.
Thanks, Michelle. I had one. It had recently come to my attention that the National Education Association had issued some guidance and a model safe zone policy in response to the change in presidential administration and then some of the things that are going on around immigration. So I just wanted to recognize that I know, we have families and maybe students in our schools who are worried about this impacting them. And just wanted to ask if we'd had a conversation either in policy committee or if we could have one about the issues that the NEA is raising, and I'd be happy to share that around with the board, the guidance that they've released, and I know several school districts around the country have adopted it. I don't know the details of it, I haven't looked into it further, but I just thought in terms of being proactive, maybe it'd be good to have a conversation.
And I can tell you guidance that we've received certainly from our attorneys and also from MSMA has pushed out some information, particularly where we have some families of immigrants looking at if perhaps that immigration comes to the schools, what's the protocols for doing that. So the entire state has that guidance that we're certainly very aware of. And I will say our organization, the superintendent's organization, Maine School Management, and also our attorneys have been really very responsive and pushing out information to us daily over the last couple of days.
Thanks, Jean.
Yep.
Two things. One, could someone remind me what the status is of that scholarship that you can say more words about?
Stetson.
I'd be happy to. So at this moment, what we have done is have sent the information to our attorneys. I'm waiting to hear back from our attorneys again, looking at, because I know there was the option the board was considering if the board was to have the funds funnel through the Freeport Scholarship Foundation. So there's some legal issues that we have to make sure that it is done the right way. So that it's at Drummond and Woodson right now. We're waiting to hear back from them. And as soon as we have that information, we'll bring it back to the board.
Other
Just the second,
another one?
sorry,
Okay.
the second thing was just to follow up on Jean's note about the opportunity that's arisen for Region 10. Region 10 was approached by Maine Maritime Academy and in collaboration also with Bath Iron Works. There's some exploration, there's some agreement to sort of explore some possibilities for collaborating a bit more between, particularly between Region 10 and Maine Maritime Academy. So that's it's been very early days, but everybody over there is very excited about it. Everybody at Maine Maritime is very excited about it. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, committee report outs? Malik?
Sure, I'll give just a quick update on the DEI committee met last week. And we talked about the strategic planning process and how we can make sure that we reach out to marginalized groups. So we talked about brainstorming ways to get student voice involved with just going to different clubs. We talked about the student leadership group, GSA, and SAFE, which is student activists in Freeport. So making sure that those voices are heard in the strategic planning process. And we also talked about ways that we can reach out to the greater community beyond just the families, students and families who are in the school district. So going to town halls in the 3 towns, the Freeport Library, Freeport Community Services. And then the Great Schools Partnership, the strategic planning group, is going to come to the next DEI committee meeting, which is in March. Oh, and one more thing. We did talk about the work that we did last year in terms of the defining the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging that the group really defined to ground the work that we're doing, bringing that to the administrators. So Jean will do that and share all that work with the administrative team. I think that's it.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea of making sure we're getting out into the communities outside just families and students. And, maybe it's an opportunity to, I know we've heard from some of the select boards and councils that they'd like to see us on occasion. So maybe this is an opportunity where we can go as we're starting to collect, as we have opportunities for folks to be involved and provide feedback, et cetera. Maybe we try and get on the agenda for a couple of minutes at each of those town meetings. And don't think we all need to go, but maybe a couple.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we talked about.
Yeah.
Was actually being at a town meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to Finance Committee and Facilities and Operations Committee joint meetings. We were going to make Beth and Kelly arm wrestle for who got to do the report out, but Beth didn't show up, so Kelly wins.
Boy. So we had a joint meeting on both December 11 and January 8, and at that time, Kelly came and presented proposals to us for the following areas of budget: the vehicle and grounds equipment replacement, some issues, some projects that came up in the energy audit, and how those would be implemented into various phases in the coming years, and life safety issues that will be become capital projects. So those 3 things were discussed in these amongst the committee members in these 2 meetings, and we discussed ways that we can use fund balance to offset some of the costs to our taxpayers, and ways to sort of soften the blow in the coming years. And there will be more details forthcoming as we continue our budget conversations.
Thank you. Questions for Kelly? Yeah, you guys will be hearing a lot more about this as we get deeper into the budget, but I think you'll find it's a very well thought out plan to sort of get us on track to upgrade some of our facilities and not just upgrade, but really maintain at a level that they need to be maintained. Okay, so we will move on to the stipend committee. And forgive me, I don't know who that is. Is that you, Kara? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we met last week and reviewed two new stipend requests, one for the MLS Mass Landing School Gaming Club and one for the Freeport High School Senior Project Coordinator. And we unanimously passed or approved both of those, and we will be reviewing those later today.
Thank you. And policy. Colin?
Hello. So the weirdness of the timing of holidays and meeting schedules, I'm reporting on two different policy meetings. Our meeting on December 6th, which was last year, and January 3rd, which is this current year. In December, we looked at EEA, student transportation, and EEAEA, student transportation employee requirements, training and responsibilities. We're bringing that before you tonight for first read. So we'll come back to that later. We also looked at EBCF, Automated External Defibrillators, AED, and we did some revisions on that, and we're going to be doing some more thinking on it and returning to it in March, so that's not being brought before you today. And we also reviewed GCQC, resignation of school unit employees. That was just part of our regular 5-6 year review cycle, and there were no substantial changes to that, so we're not bringing that before the board for approval. We also spent time talking about JIE, the pregnant students policy, which is a new policy which we are bringing before you for second read tonight. On the 3rd of January, we're doing a variety of regular policy reviews. Again, these are things that we just do every 5 years, not something required by law or a law change. So we looked at GCOA, supervision and evaluation of professional staff, and we are bringing that before you tonight for a first read. We also looked at IJOA, which is field trips and other student travel, and generated an astonishing number of questions that we then threw to Cynthia to take back, and so we're going to return to that a little bit later. We all just were very excited about the idea of field trips and travel, and just probably got overwhelmed. And then we also looked at GCMA, instructional staff planning time, and IJOC, school volunteers. There were also no substantial revisions to those, so we'll not be bringing those for your review either. So that brings us, do you have any questions about that part, those things that I talked about?
Want me to get a motion?
Sure, let's get a motion going.
Let's do it. All right. So do I have a motion for consideration and approval of second read for the following policy? Policy JIE, pregnant students. Kelly and Malik, thank you.
So yes, we are bringing before you policy JIE, pregnant students. It kind of says it right there on the tin, what this policy is about. This is laying out the district's responsibilities to students in current, potential, or past pregnancy or related conditions. We brought this before you in the past for first read in the year that came before this year, and we took this back and had some conversation about the single sentence, which you will see is stricken on page 1, which is the employee should also notify the Title IX coordinator of the pregnancy-related conditions. After conversations with the nursing staff, as well as some input from some other administrators, determined that that sentence was not necessary, and so we struck it out. The other thing I just want to say about this policy, as context for this conversation, we are bringing it for you for second read and suggesting that we pass it. As some of you may have heard, on January 9th, a U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Kentucky declared the regulations that were included in the April 2024 Biden administration Title IX final ruled those to be unconstitutional. This was a policy, the JIE was a policy that was originally catalyzed to be sort of brought before us because there was a requirement that was attached to it. It was this requirement where it says, in Section A, when a student or their parent guardian informs any RSU number 5 employee of a student's pregnancy-related condition, the employee must promptly provide the student or the parent legal guardian with the Title IX coordinator's contact information. So that was the piece that was under the Biden administration Title IX final rule, which was declared unconstitutional. In consultation with our legal counsel, we've determined that since what this policy in its substance is merely stating the obligations that we have always had under Title IX to pregnant students, that we should go ahead and pass it because it simply articulates and makes clear to the community, to students, to their families, what these obligations are and what their rights are under Title IX. Again, what the rights have been already, they have not changed. So this is simply acknowledging that more directly. What we're suggesting we change is that word must to may. So the amendment would read under A, when a student or their parent guardian informs any RSU number 5 employee of a student's pregnancy or related condition, the employee may promptly provide the student or the parent legal guardian with the Title IX coordinator's contact information. In conversation with our legal counsel, we were told that since the language that was the requirement was the must, that simply changing that to may still enacts that we think it is a good idea that happen, but simply acknowledges that we are not required by law to do so. So I'm going to hit my pause button on my monologue and hear if anybody else has ideas.
Questions? I appreciate the strike of the sentence that they would be required to notify the Title IX coordinator. I think the initial conversation was around, we didn't want to discourage students or families from sharing the information by then having to share it with someone else without their consent. So I appreciate the striking of that. And if they're open to the information being shared so they can get services, et cetera, then great. But it wouldn't require our staff to do that. So I appreciate that adjustment. Other questions or comments on this one?
Cynthia, did I miss anything, or is that okay?
You
Hear
got
that,
it
guys?
perfect.
Hear that, administrators and teachers? Perfect.
As perfect as Colin gets, I think is what she meant. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. If no other, you have a question? Yeah.
I'm wondering if we will need to update the legal reference on the back.
Look at you, Kara, coming in with an even higher level of perfection, as though we thought it possible.
It's referring to the amendments of 1972, so I'm not sure actually. I'm going to look to you, Cynthia, if that's the accurate.
The main one will stay.
So none of these references are related to the changes over the summer?
It doesn't look like it because it's 2021,
Yeah.
2020.
Okay.
1972.
Great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, good catch, Kara.
Okay. And something like that, if we did determine that wouldn't need to come back to us. That's just you can update that. Great. Any other questions or comments? All right. We shall take a vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to first read. So do I have a motion for consideration and approval for first read for the following policies? EEA, student transportation. EEAEA. Anybody else feel like that's like a bingo song or something? EEAEA, student transportation, employee requirements, training, and responsibilities. And GCOA, supervision and evaluation of professional staff. Maura, thank you. And Cheyenne, great.
Excellent. So we're bringing, as Michelle said, we're bringing these three policies before you. EEA is our student transportation policy. So that outlines our the structure of how the district provides transportation to its students, and details also the how the director of transportation, in consultation with the superintendent, makes determinations around any sort of adjustments to that. We have looked at this before. In the last year sometime. But we wanted more time. We wanted more time to think about it, give it a
So
real.
we didn't change anything last time?
You had lots of questions, and so what we ended up changing, I think the real substantive change, if you draw your attention to the third paragraph, it says, as part of this route creation process, bus stops will also be designated by the Director of Transportation. RSU number 5 buses do not travel down, and this is what has been struck. Buses do not travel down private ways or roads. For those roads, stops will be placed at the entrance of those roads. We struck out dead-end roads. So we've just taken that out after speaking with the Director of Transportation. We determined that that just is unnecessary because private ways and roads addresses any issues where a private way or road might or might not be a dead end. And any other public way would not be considered a dead end because it would have a turnaround. That is the way that we were instructed to present that to you all. Am I getting that partially right, Danielle, Kara, or Candy? Okay. Like a C, like a solid C. Or that a B? Thank you. Okay. I think the other things just to note are there were, I think, and again this is where I won't be able to speak exactly to every small adjustment since the last time we saw it last year, but we did pay attention to this hazardous walking conditions part about the sentence of these conditions are assessed by the Director of Transportation and/or Superintendent based on factors including but not limited to sidewalks, lighting, road conditions, construction, and traffic. So again, the thing there to emphasize is when there is a determination about how students would walk to school instead of being picked up as part of a route. If it is determined that they have that hazardous walking conditions exist, that would be determined by the Director of Transportation and/or the superintendent. So that would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. I'm trying to think of anything else on this to sort of call our attention to from a top level. To and from school via school bus or van. I think I said that. Some effect. Questions? Does everyone who lives on a dead-end way feel really happy now?
Well, it's not that I felt happy or unhappy about it. I just knew that they used to drive down my road, which is in fact a dead-end road. So I didn't want our policy to be counter to what I knew to be the actual happenings.
Which is reasonable. Yeah, you were interested in reality and how reality
Yes,
kind of.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of reality.
It's really cool. It's really cool of you. Other questions about this? Kara, you're not. Okay, yes,
No,
Kara.
I
What's
just
your
the
question?
last sentence I think needs either the word there or designee needs to be taken out. So just a little clarification on that last
Yeah, because usually we replace his, her with their.
yeah.
Yeah.
But or and his or her were both crossed out, so. So it should say or there.
Or their designee. Yeah.
Yes, let's change it to that. And lower our grade to a B minus. Collectively. Cool, so we'll be making that change, Cynthia, to the or their designee, but otherwise the policy would be as, except for Maura's got some big changes she wants to ask about.
No. I remember when we talked about this before, and we were talking about the difference in the transportation policy for our youngest students in pre-K and kindergarten. So the way I'm reading it, that's unchanged. They still get like individual pickup drop off to their home if possible. And is that a bus turnaround there? That's like, is that the only restriction in the last part of the sentence there in terms of being able to pick them up?
Bus turnaround, that's supposed to turn.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my understanding is what that would mean. Anybody who knows about buses?
I don't think it substantially changes what it says. So
Cynthia, what do you think of that? Should we put turn to turn around? Sorry. Should we change turn to turn around in that B, providing a suitable bus turnaround? Yes. Okay. Good catch, Mara.
So in that situation, if they lived on a private way, that private way or road, they still would not be individually picked up, or they would.
Yes, as a matter
exceptions. I
again,
see.
yes, it's an exception. So like as a matter of course, if it's a private way, they would not, and then so if it needed to be evaluated and it was a private way for a pre-K or kindergarten student, then that would be on a case-by-case basis that Jean and
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
okay, great. I feel like we brought ourselves up to a B plus on that one. No, Daniel says no. Okay. Should we go on to the next one, which is related? This is student transportation, employee requirements, training, and responsibilities. Again, this one sort of is what it says on the tin. This is sort of just outlining the requirements for employees and their training and their responsibilities. You'll note that there are some details in this that have to do with the difference between requirements for drivers who are in a vehicle carrying 10 or more passengers versus drivers who are carrying less than 10. And we didn't make any changes to any of that, but I think that was the thing we spent a bit of time talking about that as a committee, just to make sure we understood who falls into these different categories. I think there was some questions that were asked around drug and alcohol testing and kind of the regularity of that. I think at the end of that conversation, we determined that it should remain as is, because everything else in terms of those sorts of questions of testing or medical exams or what have you would be addressed by the school in other ways for the other category of people. I think. And then we have the sentence, a list of these pre-approved employees must be kept by the superintendent designee. That is also a new sentence, but I don't believe that is a new requirement. Was that a new requirement, Cynthia? No. Yeah.
So my only question is in that third paragraph that starts all school bus drivers must hold. It says we added school bus drivers are required to participate in in-service training. Does that mean just van drivers do not? Is that the distinction?
Yes, it's a different. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so it's based
license.
on the
Yeah,
license
yeah,
they have.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Yes, and to Cynthia's, thank you for the assist. That's also in terms of the testing requirements. Also is in terms of the licensing.
Other questions on that one? All right, last one.
The last one to bring before you is GCOA, which is supervision and evaluation of professional staff. This was a regular review cycle, and the thing that we spent some time talking about, and I may have Cynthia come up here because my brain may have just left me in terms of my ability to talk about probationary teachers. But that was sort of the one substantive piece that we really spent some time talking about in terms of the evaluation and the probationary employment. But my understanding is that that just as a matter of course, we evaluate all of our employees every year. The probationary employees every year. So that just was our practice, and so we're simply acknowledging that that is true instead of happening during or limited to, or but not limited to, the second year of employment.
And is this also maybe a residual from the change in the probationary period going down from 3 to 2 years?
Right, that did happen as well. But this said that they only got it at the second year, and we do it every year for probationary staff, so.
Yeah. Okay.
And the paragraph that is stricken there, you'll note that the last time this was reviewed was in 2016, and so the years 2017 and 2018 were in the future. And now, here in the present, those years are in the past. So we can strike that out because we no longer need it. Is that right, Cynthia?
That is correct.
Thank you very much for affirming that.
Okay, questions on the evaluation? Great. So one motion for first read on all three of these for Anna's purposes. The way policy gets adopted is it has to go through a 2-read process. So these three here are here for first read. If there were adjustments, questions, things we wanted the policy committee to consider, they could then take those back, talk about them, make any adjustments similar to some of the pregnant students between that first and second read. Once we vote a second time at second read, it becomes the policy of the district. So these are, you will see these three again probably at our next meeting. So all right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other questions? All those in favor? Great, none opposed. We have no unfinished business, which means we will move on to number 13, new business. Do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the following stipended positions? Mass Landing School Gaming Club with no budget impact, and the Freeport High School Senior Project Coordinator, third position, no budget impact. Kelly, thank you. And Malik?
Okay, we will talk briefly about the Mass Landing Gaming Club stipend position that went before the stipend review committee. We currently have a gaming club at Mass Landing that we've had a volunteer doing it for quite some time, and it is extremely popular. It gives kids an opportunity to do things, believe it or not, on a Friday afternoon till about 6 o'clock. That's something, another opportunity other than athletics or some other things. Right now there are 35 kids that are participating, but it could go up to 50 kids for that. And what we're recommending to do, there's going to be no budgetary impact on this because we're going to use one of the drama stipends that isn't being used to pay for this stipend. So it certainly has my full support for this, as well as the stipend review committee. And the other one that we had is the FHS Senior Project Coordinator position. There are already 2 folks that are doing that role. That's when we have students who at the end of their senior year are opting to do a very comprehensive project to show their learning. And what we found over the years is that our participation is rising to the level that 2 folks just can't do that because there's a lot of coordination that has to be done. So the recommendation is that there's no budgetary impact because we had a fishing club that has not run for a couple of years, and the fishing advisor has retired. So there's that money there not being used. So the recommendation is that we use those funds to go for an additional senior project coordinator, which has certainly the support of the committee and my full support.
Okay, questions? I had one on the gaming club. I don't see the points allocation to it. Am I missing it?
It was the same points as the drama. And that's what I'm looking where it was. Do you happen to know that, Kelly? Do you have that in front of you by any chance?
Could you explain the points while Kelly's looking for that?
Sure. So stipended positions are positions that are paid, and the amount of pay that the person receiving the stipend gets for each of these positions is determined by the number of points that are allocated to it, and the number of points is determined by the number of hours required to complete it. So if it's a full year and they meet every week for multiple hours a week, that would have a higher point value than, say, one that probably the senior project one, which is really only in the spring for a few months. I guess I don't know that because the number of hours might be different, but so it basically is a driver of how much time someone's doing the activity, which determines the amount of pay, which is in the contract.
So in looking at the contract, the drama club pre-K-8 is a point, it's in the 6-7 point range.
Okay. So we might just want to have that on the request form for number of points. Any other questions on these? Oh, my question for the senior advisor, the senior project coordinator, is this driven by more kids taking advantage of the senior projects, or are they getting more complex, or?
More students taking advantage of
okay.
it.
Other questions?
Just a statement. I have done some volunteering with the gaming club, and it's just an extraordinary effort by the teacher who coordinates that and has been doing that for a number of years, and it's really grown. It's also wonderful to see its students from 4th through 8th grade are taking part in that. So there are tables that are usually by age group, but it's really wonderful to see the middle school students who were in the club 4 years ago still continuing with that and providing kind of mentorship and guidance in that. So it really is an extraordinary opportunity. And if I were able to change any policy unilaterally at the district level, it would be that if you'd like to make public comment ever, you have to volunteer for at least 2 gaming clubs, because then you truly understand what it is like to work within this school system and the extraordinary work that the teachers do with our kids. So we may be bringing that before you. That will be a policy HOTTOGO, I think is what that will be.
Thank you, Colin. Any other comments or questions? Any support for Colin's new policy? No? All right. So we will, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If no other questions, we will take a vote. All those in favor? Great, none opposed. And we will move on to the presentation of the superintendent's budget.
Okay, so you have 3 stacks of documents in front of you this evening. One, the very thick one, that's all the financials for the proposed budget for FY26. You'll also have our budget handbook in front of you, and I'll be pointing out a couple of pages as we go through that, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint that we have. And first of all, I think it's important that I thank, I've got members of my administrative team here tonight, and I really appreciate all the effort that they have put forth to put this budget forward to you for your consideration and for the community's consideration. Okay, our first slide is just a review of the budget timeline that we have. We started really back in September where we had our timeline presented and approved by the board. We moved on to the prep in the months of November and December at the school level. We also had a meeting with leadership teams from the 3 towns in December. And here we are tonight for the first look at the board's first look at the budget. Things to look forward to coming up. We'll have some workshop sessions where we'll on the February 5th we'll hear from Moore Street, Pownell. We'll hear from Mass Landing and also the Department of Instructional Support. On the 12th, we'll have another session where we hear from Durham Community School, Freeport Middle, Freeport High School, and the Athletics Department. Moving on to the 26th of February, we'll hear, we've invited Mr. Chabot from Region 10 to come share information about Region 10's budget, as well as we'll hear from the Departments of Technology, Curriculum Instruction Assessment, Nutrition, Community Programs, Facilities, and Transportation. Moving on to the 12th of March, where the board will do some look at the review the budget again, and you'll actually begin some deliberations. There are lots of opportunities for community input, including all our documents are posted online. They're posted prior to the meeting, and they can certainly this is recorded so people can look back at it. But on the March 19th. At 6:30 at Freeport High School, we'll have an opportunity for the public to provide input to the board, as well as the board will do some deliberations that evening at their meeting. On March 26th again, we're back here at the high school again at 6:30. There will be opportunities for public input and adoption of the budget. That's our goal for that night if we've done all our work prior to. On April 9th, there'll be a Q&A for the public at Durham Community School at 6 o'clock. The 30th will be at Pownell at 6, and then May 7th at the high school, which will end up in May, on May 14th, our annual budget meeting. We rotate between Freeport High School and Durham Community School. We don't go to Pownell because the facility is not large enough to hold the public. So we will be there in Durham on May 14th, and it will end with the budget validation and referendum on June 10th. So there's lots of opportunities for the community to hear about the budget and have some input. I'd like to take a look first at our enrollment, our pre-K-12 historic enrollment. And you'll notice we go to 2023, and then we always do that counts at October 1 count. 2023, we had the actual count was 2,084 students. If you go to this year's 2024 October 1 count, we were down to 1,997 students, which is a decrease of 87 students. Primarily, those are our multilingual learners. And you'll see where you see the little growth that we had many families coming in, and those families have left us. So that's primarily that. There's a decrease in 70 multilingual students that we have. The next slide shows, if you're looking by school, we have it broken down, the October 1 count by school, all the way to our projected enrollment. You see the 2025, 2026 projected enrollment. That's our October 1 count was 1,997. I check our enrollment every Monday morning. As of this past Monday morning, we were at 2,001 students, and it fluctuates a little bit up and down. So we're projecting 2,018 students for next year. We'll pause just a moment because we lost the feed. That's okay.
I was like, who believes that?
Do a little cable switch out.
Okay, I mean, everybody has the. Yeah. Yep. Right, so people, yep. Let's do that. Technology is grand when it works, and we have a few difficulties, but we want to, in the interest of time, to continue with the presentation. And I'll try to point out which page that you're on the PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint is posted online for members of the community who may be looking at that. So we're on, if we look at 2025, 2026 projected teachers class sizes, if you turn to that slide, that reflects the staffing we have right now. It was calculated on that staffing before any recommended adjustments, which I will describe later on in the presentation. You'll notice the high school data is not here. That is in the handbook on page 4, if you're interested in looking at those numbers, and those are ranges. So you will see on page 4 of the handbook, it says Freeport High School 24-25 class sizes, to give you an idea what those are. If you look at the next slide, it says 10-year adopted budget history. And you'll notice we have all the way back from FY16, where and this is just the expenditure side, remember. There was, where we went from 7.77 to last year's expenditure increase was 6.48%. And we need to remember that during some of these years, the elementary and secondary school relief funds were leveraged to help previous budgets, and those funds are no longer available. So those funds can't be leveraged to lower the taxes. If you look at the next slide, FY26 budget priority areas and drivers. If you when we met as an administrative team, we talked about what were really the priorities that we had that were really important to us to maintain what we're doing in the district. The first one was maintaining programming. And to do that, we already have, we've negotiated both of our contracts with our educators and then our educational support personnel. So those amounts are already there. We want to continue funding for professional development, and that includes tuition reimbursement. And we have, that is a benefit our teachers have, and we have more folks that are going on to continue their education. And
Staffing recommendations are reflective of FY26 projected enrollment, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Our second priority area in driver was maintaining supports for students, and that's where you're going to see a few ads as we go through the budget. We're requesting an RTIB educational technician at Durham Community School. We're asking for some additional days for the guidance counselor secretary at the high school, and also their summer programming. This is not special education, but other summer programming for Durham Community School, Pownell Elementary School, and the high school. And those before, those were funded through the elementary and secondary school relief funds, and those are no longer available, and that's why we're putting them in the local budget, so we can continue to provide those programming, summer programming. Our third priority is to support the infrastructure and to provide a safe learning environment. And that's where we'll see an articulated plan detailed out for our capital projects, life safety, and that includes safety and security upgrades, and also our fleet, buses, vans, trucks, and ground equipment. And we will be presenting further detailed about an articulated plan at the next meeting that we have, and there'll be an opportunity for discussion there. Those plans were, we have had, as mentioned before, Kelly mentioned before, we had a combined facilities and finance committee meeting for the last couple of weeks, and we were able to provide those details for members of those committees, and we will bring that forward to the full board. The next slide is unknown estimations, and at this time, we don't know the Region 10s, what we will be asked to contribute there, so we put a placeholder over there. We did a percentage increase at this time, and when we know that, we will change that accordingly. When you get to the next slide, it says proposed increases and reductions summary. And when you see the rating on the side, on the left-hand side, and this is going to be for the next 3 slides that we talk about, M means maintenance, and then we have 1 is priority 1, 2 priority 2, and 3 is a priority 3. And then you'll see an OR in some cases. Those are other reductions. So we're looking at the first one, and this first slide, they're actually all maintenance. Salary and benefit increases for current staffing levels. That amount does not include the 1 year only position. There was a teaching position at Mass Landing and a special education position. Remember, those were in reserve accounts last year. So those are not included in this budget, and we're not requesting those positions. So the request is $3,366,202. Insurance, there's been an increase there to $21,511. And we're looking the next one under nutrition, where actually there is a decrease or a reduction there of $45,743. The reason for that is that there's a higher level of support from the state. You know, there's free meals, free lunches now for kids. And also the department over the last several years has been really self-sufficient. The next one is adult education. I think we've realized it's been the same $112,000 we put in there for several years. It's not needed, so there's a $24,000 decrease. The program really is supporting itself, and also there were some loss of families for our multilingual children, their families who could partake in adult education who are no longer with us. CTE, that's Region 10. There's a placeholder you see there. Our debt service, we have it's been reduced by $57,637. That's the high school renovations and also Durham Community School construction. Miscellaneous supplies, books, furniture, subscriptions, stipends, as a district-wide figure, a decrease in $76,217. That's primarily driven by enrollment, because we really look at per student costs for some of those things, and with the decreased enrollment, we needed fewer things. we turn to the next page and you'll see some priority ones. As I mentioned previously, the summer programming at Durham, Pownell, and the high school, that'll be an addition of $24,842. Our capital projects funding, that's the local budget piece. It's not your reserve accounts. And we realized we really need to increase to keep up with the cost of materials and labor. We added some money in that last year, and we're recommending adding an additional $30,000 to capital projects funding. Transportation, our fleet maintenance, there's been an increase in bus maintenance that we are actually sending out to be fixed. It's, as you can imagine, just like our own vehicles, buses are very, very complicated, and there are some that we can't fix in-house, and they're all being moved out, and we're asking an increase of $40,204. And also, noted that our what we are doing, our interim transportation director also does some of the mechanic work, and it's very difficult when you're driving a bus and doing that to also do a great deal of maintenance on our fleet. There's the next one is the new RTIB Ed Tech at Durham for $48,600. The extra hours for the guidance secretary at the high school from 163 work days to 183 equates to an additional $2,525. And the next two go hand in hand. We need to have an adjustment for our bus lease. We try to have three. We've had 3 leases, and as you can imagine, the costs are going up. So that's $4,338. And then the last one on this slide is implementation of a vehicle replacement plan, which we're going to talk to you more about. That's not just buses, but it's also vans. As you can imagine, we have a fleet of vans, some with, for example, 194,000 miles on them. And it's really time for us to look at what's an articulated plan to replace those, because we do have them transporting kids every day. And we will share more with you about that, but then that would be $163,662. And for that, actually, when you look at the revenue side, we're going to suggest that we use some undesignated for that when we get there. Moving on to the next slide. OR, that's where you see some other reductions, and I'm going to explain exactly what those positions are. And it's very difficult when we talk positions to not think of people, because we are in the people business. But I'll explain a little bit more what that looks like and where we're at with that, because we're really talking positions, not individuals. We're recommending a reduction of 8 educators in the district for $816,000. As well as 5 regular ed technicians, not special ed technicians, but regular ed, for $243,000. And also the mechanic not to fund next year for $86,800. And I'll talk a little bit more about those when we get to the next slide. Those reductions are enrollment driven. As I mentioned before, earlier on, looking at the enrollment, we are down a significant number of students. So we need less folks for those students. If you look at initially, if you go to where it says initial requests, when we put all those things in there before we did some reductions, the increase on the expenditure side was 8.47%. Our team rolled up our sleeves, did a lot of work, and we are now, with those reductions, down to 5.72% increase. And that's noted on the right-hand side. I'd like to talk about the staff reductions now. And to let you know, before I go into what those are, I did some analysis of the last 3 years. I looked at how many positions did we hire, looking at how many folks retired, how many folks just moved on for life circumstances. And then I took out any new positions the district had added. And I took out, this past year, we had 3 positions, our school psychologist, BCBA, and a special ed teacher at the high school, that we hadn't filled at all. So I took those number of positions out. And over the last 3 years, we averaged turnover people about 21.5 to 22, 23 positions. So when you look at the number of positions we're citing here, through attrition itself, people should feel like that more than likely there will be a position in RSU 5 for them if they would like to stay. Looking through this, I'll go through now on this next slide what we're looking at for reductions. One is one multilingual educator, and as I mentioned earlier, we are down 70 multilingual students, and our projection for next year is about 36 students, total students. So we're suggesting one educator, and we're also suggesting not funding the mechanic, as for reasons I mentioned before. At Durham, because of enrollment, we're looking at reducing a grade 3 educator and a grade 5 educator. And at Moore Street School, a kindergarten and a grade 1 educator. In Mass Landing, we mentioned we weren't going to, we did not put the reserve account position in the budget. And so I'm recommending the regular education technician. It's actually the bench sub there, and the nice news is that we have a lot of substitute now, so that position is not necessary. At the middle school, we're recommending reducing a science educator, and then we have some little pieces and parts of positions put together. So we're suggesting a reduction of 0.25 math educator and 0.75 English language arts teacher. In addition, one regular education technician, and I'll say that position is not even filled at this time. At the high school, we're recommending the reduction of a 0.5 Spanish educator. Currently, it's being filled by other folks in the district, and that's, as you know, those half-time positions are really difficult to fill. And also, we're suggesting a reduction of a 0.5 English language arts educator and 3 ed techs. The 3 ed techs are not filled currently. Looking at that, and I know Principal Gulko will talk with you more when she does her presentation, but they're looking for a way to change the schedule so that the teaching load is more equal. We're not going to not have English. We're just going to have classes that are a little bit larger. And also getting the teaching load down to 5 classes they're teaching, and looking how we can do really that block of intervention for kids in a different way. If you pull to the next slide, that's where you get an article by article description of the increase. So Article 1, that's all the regular education components are in there. So that's up 2.48% total. And there are a lot in that particular line, there are, that's where your salary and benefits, for example, and other things for your teachers go. So that's the biggest portion there. Special education is up 10.95%. So our proposal is $6,513,451. Career and Tech Ed, that's where we put a 9% increase in there because we're not sure. That's for Region 10. Our other instruction, which is co-curricular and athletics, the proposal is $1,119,087, which is an increase of 8.14%. Article 5, student and staff support. The proposal is $4,644,307 for 6.25%. Article 6, system admin, we're proposing $1,263,587 for an increase of 7.13%. Article 7 is school admin. The proposal is $2,514,485 for an increase of 7.36%. Article 8, that's transportation, buses. The proposal is $1,931,576 for a 21.74% increase. Article 9 is our facilities and maintenance, $5,527,506 for 7.55%. Our debt service, the proposal is $1,087,428. That's the decrease of 2.13%. And all other, and that's where our school nutrition lives. We're proposing $139,591 for a decrease of 24.68%. So overall, if you look at articles, the way it works, articles 1 through 11, we're looking at the proposed total budget is $43,903,018. When we add in the adult education portion, and you'll see there's a decrease in their request, the total operating budget for FY26, we're proposing $43,991,018, which is a 5.72% increase on the expenditure side. Moving on to the next slide, where we can talk a little bit about our reserve accounts to give you a picture of where we are at this moment in time. At the top, you'll see reserve account funding. We're going to recommend appropriating $2,509,376 from undesignated fund balance, and I'll explain what those are as we go through this. And knowing that this is not part of the local budget. These are reserve accounts in addition to. Article 1, last year we created this reserve account in the amount of $190,000. The only thing we anticipate spending out of it is the educator at Mass Landing School we added. So in the end, you should have a balance of $120,837 at the end of the year. Special education, we had $450,000 there. Again, the only thing we spent out of that is for a 1-year only special educator. So at the end of the year, we anticipate having $335,564 in there. And that had everything from an educator. We had some educational technicians, and we also had some money there for out-of-district placement. Article 5 reserve account, that's your student and staff support. We fully funded the guidance counselor at Durham, so we'll have a balance there of $6,768 at the end of the year. Article 6, system admin, that was for the strategic planning consultant. So certainly using that money, and as you know, we're going to be spreading out more over 2 years. We're not asking for any more money in there because we were able to look at some attorney fees and some other things in the article to pay for that for next year. So there's no ask there, but that reserve account will be emptied at the end of the year. And Article 8, we created last year, the transportation reserve balance, $60,000 in there. And if you recall at that time when we were creating the budget, we really didn't know if we would need a lot more money to help transport some of our families that were living at the hotel and so forth. And we did not need that. So that's why you'll have that balance of $60,000 anticipated at the end of the year. The next page, more reserve accounts, heating fuel reserve funds. We've had $100,000 sitting there. We haven't touched it. So we're not recommending adding anything to that. So that would be $267,000 we have in our local budget for heating already, and we believe that will be enough, so we don't need to add any additional to that sort of just in case reserve account. Now your capital, and here's where where we're asking for some additional undesignated fund balance. So we're recommending adding from undesignated fund to capital $2,434,376. That's for life safety projects that we're going to talk about in depth at our next meeting. There's also money left in there, if you recall, for Pownell Septic. We're well on our way to almost getting there to go out to bid. It's taken a long journey to get things approved and the plans done correctly. So we do anticipate when the ground is no longer frozen and the children are gone off to summer, that we'll be able to replace the septic. So in the end, we're thinking at the end on June 30th, 2026, that we will still have $525,175 left in the capital reserve fund for after we have done the Pownell Septic and the $2.4 million in life safety projects in every building in the district. The next page, the tennis court reserve fund. We recommend putting another $40,000 in there to get it up to $190,000, and then track and field reserve fund. We're recommending another $35,000 to put that at $280,000. And so those are all the reserve accounts that you have. And then the end, just the end of this is that I think, when we go back to look at the purpose why we're here is that our mission is to inspire and support every learner by challenging minds, building character, speaking creatively, and sparking creativity and nurturing passions so that students graduate as compassionate, honest, and respectful citizens who learn and contribute to their communities for life. So I think we go back to what our mission and vision is and why we're all here. So a lot of work has been done to get us to this point, and I know later on we'll be having lots of discussions. Our administrators will be able to give some detailed presentations about what their asks are over the next few weeks, and you'll have an opportunity to ask them a lot of questions and ask me a lot of questions, as well as Kelly for the financial piece.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Just a couple of reminders for folks on process. Typically, this first high-level run-through of the budget is exactly that. It's just the initial conversation. We don't typically get into detailed questions at this point. If there are any clarifying high-level questions you want to ask about what we've seen so far, we can do that. But once we get into the presentations by department and by school, that's where you'll really have an opportunity to drill down with really specific questions. And it gives you a little bit of time to process all the information we just got, because it is a lot of information. The only thing I did want to just put out there, and I thank Jean for doing the research into how many positions we typically roll in a given year, being north of 20. And we're looking at 8 educator positions this year potentially. And while they have been identified where they will be, it does not necessarily mean if it's a grade 3 teacher that it's one of those grade 3 teachers that's currently in Durham will not be there next year. It's a much more complex process than that. Most of these teachers are certified in certain ranges, and so if someone leaves at another grade 3 school, and we can transition a teacher from somewhere else, just know that it's not. It looks very specific in the presentation, and it's not quite that black and white in terms of how it actually plays out. In a perfect world, we roll another 20 positions this summer, and we only replace 12 of them. So that.
And one other thing to let the board remember, we already have 2 retirements.
Right.
So there are already 2 retirements that we've received.
Of the 8, right. So, it's the reduction of educator positions has not been something that has been on the table in this district for quite a few years, given the growing enrollment that we've seen, which has been fantastic. So it's not something that we're used to seeing each year. So I just wanted to remind board members and maybe folks that are watching at home that this is a very thoughtful process with a goal of really minimizing the impact on the actual staff we have to continue staying in the district. So. Any clarifying questions folks had? See what I mean by being quite a first meeting, Anna? That's quite, just throw you right into the deep end. Yeah.
So the projected teachers and class sizes, you said reflect current staffing levels.
That's current. And the next time we had a conversation, we will have what it looks like with those reductions in there as well. But we have checked, so the board knows, we have checked your policy class size, which there's a range in there, and we are within that policy.
Okay.
But we'll provide that as well for you next time, Kara.
Thank you.
Maura?
Thank you, Jean, and everyone for all your hard work on this. On the total, I was just wondering, for the 8 educators, is it 8 total FTEs? Because I know they're just parts of different positions, so it's not 8 people total. It's 8 FTEs. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Stay tuned, lots more to come. All right. We don't have any personnel items on the agenda this evening, so we do have our second public comment, so I will open that up if anyone wanted to share anything. All right. Then I would take a motion to adjourn. And just want everybody to know that Phoebe stayed the whole time. Great job. So exciting. I think I saw Kelly and Kara. Is that right for a motion and a second to adjourn? Yeah. Okay. I thought I did. Maybe it was Danielle. All